Nobody can teach you how to be a better man if you're only studying things that make you feel smart. In the last video, we talked about how self-awareness helps you to find your blind spots. In this video, we talk about what to do once you find them. Most men are continuous learners already. They're pursuing their next skill, the next technique, the next certification, whatever, the next promotion at work. Most of the time, they're investing that energy in the wrong direction. They're polishing their strengths instead of filling in the gaps or dealing with the places where they're weak or have issues. Maybe they're getting better at golf or their video games, or better at making money, or like me, getting better at trivia. Not getting better at how to relate to people, how to rebuild trust, how to be a present father, how to be a good husband. Here's my example of pursuing that trivia knowledge. Lori and I were trying to identify a bird in the sky one day. I said, I think that's a turkey vulture. And she asked me, why can't you just call it a vulture? And I said, well, because, I looked it up and I happen to know it's a turkey vulture. What frustrated her about that story is the fact that I took the time to learn the name of the bird, but I had never taken the time to learn how to treat people better. When she said that to me, that was one of those times that I realized I'd been putting a lot of effort into learning the wrong things. Most men have a very limited emotional vocabulary. And so if you're going to learn about treating people well, having the vocabulary to not only describe what you're feeling, but to connect with what someone else is feeling is pretty important. And so if you're limited to 5 words, fine, angry, tired, stressed, good, it's really hard to communicate what you're actually feeling when you don't have the best words to describe what's going on for you. Taking the time to learn that emotional vocabulary will help you when you're trying to communicate with your wife. You can communicate something new, that you're feeling shame, not really anger or frustration, but there's a nuance to what you're trying to share. Maybe you say, I don't even really know what I'm feeling, but what you're feeling is overwhelm or you're struggling. There's a book that I like to use which maps out a pretty full range of emotions that most men have never learned. Not only does this help you broaden your vocabulary, it helps you to be more accurate in what you're trying to share. You're not as limited in the words that you're using to try to describe how you're feeling in the moment. You may not become the greatest communicator that ever lived, but you'll stop calling everything fine when it isn't, or a little bit better understanding of how to share what you're feeling. You wouldn't want to go to a doctor who just gives you, you're not doing great. You'd want somebody who has better words for the diagnosis of how you're feeling. So do some research, dig down. It would be helpful to the people around you if they knew there was more going on for you than, those 5 words I mentioned earlier. That might help them to step into the gap for you when they know that it's not just that you're not doing great, but that you're feeling shame, or you're feeling distress, or you're feeling overwhelmed. Help yourself by giving more information about how you're feeling. The other side of this is, as you begin to recognize your own emotions, you'll be able to recognize the emotions of other people. This is pretty important because for men have a tendency to misread a lot of emotions as anger or aggression. I remember a time Lori and I were sitting in the park and she was reading these feeling words to me, and the expressions on my face did not line up. And when she tried to show me those emotions, I generally misread them as something that felt more aggressive than it actually was. When you can clarify what your wife is actually feeling, instead of hearing or responding to what looks like aggression to you, you might be able to say, she's scared or exhausted or grieving. Instead of taking it personally, you'll be able to step toward her. If you haven't trained yourself to respond to something other than anger, you may go straight to defensiveness when she really needs you. This is important for your relationship. Empathy is not just a soft skill. This is not something that just therapists learn to use or pastors learn to use. This is a survival skill for your relationship. This is the way that you'll be able to see a look on your wife's face and respond to it appropriately. Or the look on your child's face, or the look on a friend's face, which helps you to stay in those relationships and have that depth of vulnerability that we've already talked about. Without empathy, it's extremely difficult to build real connection with other people because they feel missed, they feel overlooked. Going back to our loneliness episode, when we talked about that ability to connect requires empathy, and it requires that you're able to go deeper with that person. And some of that depth is being able to read the emotion on their face and not go to a place of, wow, they're mad at me all the time. Empathy can be learned. Empathy isn't about agreeing with other people. It's proving that you actually heard them. When you respond to their emotions, you're showing them, oh, yeah, I get what you're trying to share with me right now. Now, I picked empathy as a thing to work on, but you may have identified another weakness. In the last video, you may have said, here's a weakness that I need to work on. Here's something from my self-awareness exercise that is important to me and important to my relationship. If you're already good at empathy, go with that one. Find a podcast or a resource, a book, a video sharing how they have improved that area of their life. Don't study something that you're already good at. Study something that you've been avoiding. How do I show up well for my wife? How do I make dinner when she's been asking me to make dinner for years? How do I take care of my children when they need me? And I know that you probably know generally how to do these things, but connecting with people emotionally, connecting with what they need from you, those are the things that continuous learning is about. This is about going back to those weaknesses and beginning to develop a new response when those situations come up. Next time, we're going to be talking about mentoring. Mentoring is when you find a person who has some of those skills and can teach them to you in a way you can't just pick it up from a book. You need someone who's navigated the challenge that you're dealing with, the storm you're heading into, and that person is able to walk you through what you need to learn on a regular basis, and you can see them live it out. You can see how they respond to those situations, and that mentor can show you how to do this from not only learned experience, but from their own stories, how they learned when they had skin in the game. Make sure you go to stormreadymen.com and take the assessment. If you're married, support your wife on the Couple Cure channel.